Leonard Granger measured out 3 scoops of coffee grounds, same as he'd done every morning for 40 years. The Mr. Coffee burbled on the counter of his one-bedroom apartment above the hardware store. Outside, sleet ticked against the window like impatient fingers. February in Iowa, cold, gray, honest about what it was. His phone lit up on the counter. Melissa. His hand froze mid-scoop. Coffee grounds scattered across the formica. He stared at his daughter's name like it was a word in a foreign language. 3 years since she'd last called. 3 years of silence. And now, on this particular Saturday morning, she wanted to talk. Today was the day Sharon married Derek. Leonard's hand hovered over the phone. It vibrated once more, insistent, then went still. The cracked handle of his coffee mug caught his knuckle as he set down the scoop. He picked up the phone. "Dad?" Melissa's voice came through thin, like she was calling from farther away than Denver. "Melissa." His own voice surprised him, steady, when his chest felt anything but. "I'm at the farmhouse. Can you come over? We need to go through some things." Not I need you or I want to see you. We need to go through some things, like he was a task on a list. "Your mother's getting married today," Leonard said. A pause. "I know. That's why, look, can you just come? I'm here now." The line went dead before he could answer. 20 minutes later, Leonard pulled his 008 Silverado into the farmhouse driveway. Melissa's rental car sat where his truck used to park every night for 40 years. Colorado plates, some compact thing that looked like it'd blow away in a strong wind. The front door stood open. Through the screen, he could see cardboard boxes stacked in the hallway. She was already packing his life away. The screen door's spring creaked as he pulled it open, same sound it had made since 1987 when his father installed it. "Melissa." In here. The dining room. His mother's hutch stood open, and Melissa was wrapping depression glass in newspaper. Quick, efficient movements. Each piece of glass, pale green, ribbed, older than Leonard himself, got 3 wraps of newspaper and went into a box marked "Donate" in black marker. "Hey." She didn't look up. "Hey yourself." Leonard stood in the doorway. His daughter looked older than 35, thinner, hair pulled back in a way that made her face look sharp. "Didn't know you were coming in." "Mom thought it'd be good if I helped you pack." She wrapped a serving bowl, his grandmother's, without pausing. "She said you agreed to be out by the end of the month." Leonard felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I didn't agree to anything." Now Melissa looked up. "What?" "Nobody told me about a deadline." Her face did something complicated. Annoyance, maybe, or confusion. "Mom said you two worked it out. The farmhouse goes to her in the settlement. You get the apartment in town." And she said it like she was reminding him of something he'd forgotten, not telling him something new. "The settlement says she gets first option to buy. Doesn't say I have to leave by any particular date." He kept his voice level. 40 years of assessing damage claims had taught him how to stay calm when people tried to rewrite the facts. Melissa set down the bowl harder than she needed to. "Well, I'm here now. Flew in yesterday. Might as well get started." She wasn't here for him. She was here to help pack him out. Leonard watched her wrap another piece, a candy dish, the one his mother used to fill with butterscotch every Christmas. Melissa was treating it like yard sale junk. 3 wraps into the box, reach for the next piece. "Your grandmother loved that glass," he said quietly. "Mom says we can't keep everything. Mom says..." There it was. The authority she followed wasn't standing in this room. "How's Denver?" Leonard tried. "How's teaching?" "Fine." "School year going okay?" "Dad, can we just..." She gestured at the boxes. I only have the weekend." "Right, the weekend. Not I came to see you, not I missed you. Just the weekend and a job to finish." Leonard reached for a teacup, and Melissa said, "I've got it." His hand stopped. She didn't want his help packing up his own mother's things. He stepped back. Behind Melissa, more boxes lined the wall. "Donate," "Storage," one marked "Trash." Through the doorway, he could see into the kitchen, more boxes on the table. "I'll let you work," he said. She nodded, already reaching for the next piece of glass. Leonard walked to the kitchen, just to see. His father's toolbox sat in a box marked "Donate." The wooden recipe box his mother had kept on the counter for 50 years. "Donate." The ceramic rooster that had lived by the sink since before Leonard was born. "Trash." On the counter, half hidden under a folded dish towel, he saw an envelope. White. Good paper. Elegant script. He pulled it out. "Mr. Leonard Granger," in guest Sharon's handwriting. He'd know it anywhere. She'd addressed their Christmas cards for 40 years. She'd written this invitation herself, put his name on it, and guessed, like he had someone to bring, like she didn't know he'd be standing alone if he came. She'd invited him to watch her marry Derek Paulson, personally addressed the envelope. "What's that?" Melissa stood in the doorway. Leonard held up the invitation. "Your mother's wedding." Melissa's face did something he couldn't read. You're not actually thinking of going. Don't know yet. Dad? She crossed her arms. That would just be awkward for everyone. Did your mother tell you why we divorced? Melissa looked away. You were emotionally distant. She tried for years. She stopped. It doesn't matter now. Emotionally distant. Sharon's words in Melissa's mouth. Leonard set the invitation back on the counter, looked at his daughter, who believed he was the villain in a story she'd been told but never questioned. I'll be out by the end of the month, he said. You don't need to pack for me. He walked past her, through the living room, where he'd taught her to ride a bike in the hallway on rainy days, past the stairs, where he'd carried her on his shoulders when she was 6, out the screen door that sang its familiar creak. In his truck, Leonard sat with the engine running. Melissa's silhouette moved past the dining room window, through the house, through his life, packing it into boxes like it had never mattered at all. The wedding invitation was still inside. White envelope, Sharon's careful script, Mr. Leonard Granger, and guest. She'd expect him to stay away. That's what a man with dignity would do, probably. Disappear quietly. Let her have her day without the ghost of the first marriage hanging around. But something about that envelope, about Sharon taking the time to write his name in her own hand, that wasn't an invitation. That was something else. That was her making sure he knew exactly where he stood. Friday evening, Leonard pushed through the door of the VFW hall at 6:15. The smell hit him first: fried fish, weak coffee, and old cigarette smoke baked into the paneling from before the indoor smoking ban. The same smell since 1974, probably. Some things didn't change, and Leonard found that comforting. Tommy Breck waved from their usual table near the kitchen. Saved you a seat, Len. Leonard grabbed a styrofoam plate and let Judy pile on fried cod, coleslaw, and a dinner roll that had seen better days. He paid his $5, poured himself coffee from the urn that had been making bad coffee since Reagan, and joined Tommy. How you holding up? Tommy asked. I'm here. Tommy nodded. That was answer enough. They'd been friends 30 years, long enough to know when not to push. Walt Krieger pulled out a chair across from them, balancing his plate and a manila folder. Gentlemen? Well, Walt. Leonard moved his coffee to make room. Walt was 71, retired from surveying, the kind of man who kept his reading glasses on a chain and actually read the town council minutes. He set his folder down carefully, like it mattered. Been helping sort through property records for the planning board, Walt said, cutting into his fish. Saw your farm boundaries in the old surveys. Leonard sipped his coffee. Tasted like it had been sitting since lunch. Yeah? Something don't add up right. And Walt pushed his glasses up. New survey stakes are 3 feet east of where your grandpa's iron markers are. Orchard lines moved. Moved how? On paper, someone filed a new survey last fall. Shows the eastern boundary different from the original 47 survey. Tommy stopped eating. That legal? Walt shrugged. If the paperwork's filed right, but iron markers don't move themselves, Tommy. And Frank Granger's markers are still right where he put them in 1947, I checked. Leonard set down his fork. His grandfather had planted that orchard, 60 apple trees for 60 months overseas in the war. Every tree had a story. And now someone was moving lines on paper? Who filed the new survey? Leonard asked. Law firm out of Waterloo, Paulson and Associates. The name landed like a fist. Derek Paulson, real estate attorney, soon to be Sharon's husband. Huh, Leonard said, because he didn't trust himself to say more. Walt tapped the folder. I got copies, just in case you need them. They finished eating without talking much. Around them, the Friday fish fry crowd swelled. Old veterans, their wives, a handful of younger guys back from Afghanistan and Iraq. Karen and Deb worked the kitchen, gossiping over the fryer. Pastor Jim from First Lutheran sat with the Methodist minister, the two of them probably solving the world's problems over coffee and whitefish. Tommy pushed his plate back. You going tomorrow? Leonard knew what he meant. Haven't decided. Bonnie from Roy's Diner asked if there's extra seats at the reception, Tommy said. Said she'd like to see how the other half lives. Leonard looked at him. Tommy's face was neutral, but his eyes said he knew exactly what he was offering. A +1. Moral support. Backup. She say why she wants to go? Didn't ask. But Bonnie don't usually take interest in society weddings. Tommy drained his beer. Sometimes bearing witness matters, Len. That's all I'm saying. Walt closed his folder, looked at Leonard over his reading glasses. Your grandpa built something that lasted. That counts for something? Leonard drove home as the sun set behind gray clouds. His phone rang just as he was unlocking the apartment door. Sharon's name lit up the screen. He thought about not answering. Then he picked up. Leonard. Her voice had that careful sweetness she used when she wanted something. I wanted to check in. Make sure you're okay. Subtext. Make sure you're not planning anything stupid. I'm fine, Sharon. Melissa said she saw you today at the house. A pause. She's just trying to help, with the transition. Transition, like his whole life was a phase they were moving past. She said you were surprised about the timeline, Sharon continued. I thought we'd discussed it. We didn't. Well, her voice tightened, the sweetness cracking. Derek and I just want everyone to move forward peacefully. No drama, no complications. Derek and I. We. Us. Them. A unit. A conspiracy in pronoun form. I saw the invitation, Leonard said. Silence on the line. Then, I thought it was the right thing to do, to include you. Uh-huh. Leonard, look, tomorrow's important to me. To us. It would be awkward if you came. For Melissa's sake. If nothing else. There it was. Not please don't come, but it would be awkward. Like his presence would be the thing that made it uncomfortable, not the fact that his wife of 40 years was marrying another man 8 months after signing divorce papers. I haven't decided what I'm doing tomorrow, Leonard said. Leonard, her voice went hard. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. 40 years of marriage, and it came down to this. Her telling him to disappear quietly, to make things easy for her. Have a nice wedding, Sharon. He hung up. First time in 40 years he'd ended a conversation with her. His hand shook as he set the phone down. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. 1 bedroom, kitchenette, bathroom. Everything he owned fit in here now. The cracked coffee mug sat in the sink from this morning. His navy suit hung on the bedroom door. 20 years old, still fit, though the shoulders were tight now. On the counter, he'd brought the wedding invitation home without meaning to. Must have grabbed it when he left the farmhouse. The envelope sat there, Sharon's handwriting perfect and deliberate. Mr. Leonard Granger and guest. She was afraid he'd come. That's why she called. She was afraid he'd show up and stand there, a walking reminder of the first 40 years before Derek. Leonard picked up the envelope, turned it over in his hands. The paper was expensive, thick. The kind of paper that said, we have money now. The kind of paper that said, we're better than before. He thought about his grandfather planting 60 apple trees in 1947, thought about iron markers that didn't move, even when paperwork said they did. Thought about Melissa packing his mother's glass into boxes marked donate. Sharon expected him to stay away. That's what a quiet man would do. Fade into the background. Let her have her story where he was the problem and Derek was the solution. But staying away, that felt like surrender. He looked at the invitation one more time. Sharon's handwriting, his name, the date and time, the address of some barn outside of town, all decorated up for a wedding. She wanted him gone, wanted him silent, wanted him disappeared, which was exactly why part of him wanted to go. Leonard set the invitation back on the counter and looked at his reflection in the darkened window. 67 years old, gray, tired, but not dead yet. Sometimes showing up was the whole battle. Tommy had said that once, years ago, about something else. But it fit now. Sharon thought silence meant surrender. Maybe it was time to show her the difference. Saturday afternoon, Bonnie Ketchum sat at the counter of Roy's Diner, with a blue composition notebook open in front of her. Mead brand, bent corners, pages filled with dates and times and careful handwriting. 2 years of her life in this notebook. Roy refilled her coffee without asking. You sure about this, Bon? She nodded, not looking up. Her finger traced down a page. February 14th, 2023. Booth 6, 2:15 p.m. Some things need saying, she said. Roy wiped down the counter, glanced at the notebook. He'd seen her writing in it for months now. Never asked what it was for. That was Roy. Minded his business until it was time not to. Tommy's picking you up at 5:45? That's right. You want me to close up and come too? As backup? Bonnie looked up at him. Roy was 73, had owned this diner since 1979, had seen everything twice. You'd do that? Known Leonard since he was a boy. Good man. If someone's doing him dirty, I'd like to see it made right. She reached across the counter and squeezed his weathered hand. Thank you. But I think 3 of us walking in will be plenty. Roy nodded and went back to wiping down the already clean counter. Bonnie turned back to her notebook. The pages were a calendar of betrayal, written in ballpoint pen. February 14th, 2023. Valentine's Day. Booth 6, 2:15 p.m. Sharon Granger and Derek Paulson both ordered coffee. Derek's exact words. Once we're married, the farm's worth twice what Leonard thinks. The orchard land alone, if we can get it rezoned commercial. She'd been pouring coffee at the next booth when she heard it. Her hand had steadied. She'd finished pouring, said nothing, walked back to the waitress station and written it down. Date, time, booth number, direct quote. Because 37 years of waitressing had taught Bonnie Ketchum one thing. People talked like waitresses were furniture, and furniture heard everything. She flipped through the pages, each entry the same format, clinical, precise, April 3rd, 2023, booth 6, 11:30 a.m. Derek showing Sharon paperwork, talking about moving survey markers, An Eastern boundary adjustment. And Sharon asked if it was legal. Derek, it's legal if the right paperwork gets filed, and I know how to file paperwork. June 12th, 2023. Booth 6, 3:45 p.m. Sharon worried about Melissa. Derek, she'll side with you. She already thinks he's distant. Just keep that narrative going. 23 entries total, 22 months of documentation, all while Leonard Granger worked and paid bills and had no idea his wife and her lawyer boyfriend were planning to take everything. Bonnie knew about planning to take everything. In 2008, a financial advisor in a nice suit had walked her through some papers. Pension, restructuring, he'd called it. Better returns. She'd signed. 6 months later, her pension was gone. The advisor was gone. Nobody listened when she tried to explain what happened. Just an old waitress who didn't understand finance. She'd learned something that year. The world didn't protect people who played by the rules. It protected people who were smart enough to cheat and rich enough to get away with it. But this time, someone had been watching. Someone had been writing it down. She closed the notebook and checked her lipstick in the mirror behind the counter. Tommy would be here in 20 minutes. At her small rental house, Bonnie stood at her kitchen table and went through the notebook one more time. She wanted to be sure. Each entry had to count. August 8th, 2023. Booth 6, 2 o'clock p.m. Derek explaining timing. File before harvest appraisal to keep farm value low. Sharon nervous. Derek, trust me. I do this for a living. October 30th, 2023. Booth 6, 10:15 a.m. Sharon having doubts, said she feels guilty. Derek, it's all legal. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just finally putting yourself first. December 19th, 2023. Booth 6, 4:30 p.m. Discussing separation announcement. Sharon wanted to wait until after Christmas. Derek said right after holidays would be perfect. Less time for him to lawyer up before the farm value gets assessed. The last entry was from 3 days ago, February 7th, 2024. Booth 6, 1 o'clock p.m. Final planning. Sharon worried Leonard might cause a scene at the wedding. Derek, he won't. He's too proud. Guys like him fade away quiet. Guys like him, like being decent was a weakness. Like keeping your word made you a fool. Bonnie's hands shook slightly as she closed the notebook and put it in her purse. A big black purse. The kind that could hold a notebook, plus wallet, plus tissues, plus everything else. She checked the clasp twice. A truck horn sounded outside. Tommy's diesel F-250 idling at the curb. She locked her front door and walked to the truck. Tommy leaned across and opened the passenger door. In the middle of the bench seat, already buckled in, was Leonard Granger. Navy suit, white shirt, clean-shaven. He looked like he was going to something important. He looked like a man who'd decided not to disappear. Evening, Bonnie, Leonard said. Leonard. She climbed in, settled her purse on her lap. The notebook inside weighed about 8 ounces. It felt heavier. You sure about this? Tommy asked her as he pulled away from the curb. Bonnie patted her purse. I got 23 reasons I'm sure. They drove through town in silence. Past Roy's Diner, past the hardware store with Leonard's apartment above it, past First Lutheran, where Leonard and Sharon had married in 1984. The February evening was gray, but warmer than it should be. 38 degrees instead of 15. The kind of thaw that made everything muddy. At the stoplight by the church, Walt Krieger's sedan pulled alongside them. He rolled down his window, signaled for Tommy to pull over. They stopped in the church parking lot. Walt got out with a manila folder under his arm. He walked to Tommy's window, looked past him to Leonard. Got those property documents, Walt said. Original 47 survey and the new one filed last September. 3-foot discrepancy, 2 acres of orchard. He held up the folder. Derek's law firm filed it. His signature, his seal. Leonard took the folder, opened it. Even in the dimming light, Bonnie could see the maps. 2 surveys side by side, lines that didn't match. This is fraud, Walt said. Simple, factual. Criminal fraud, if you want to use it. Leonard stared at the documents for a long moment. Then he looked up at the 3 faces watching him. Tommy, Walt, Bonnie. I just want to show up, Leonard said quietly. See what happens. Bonnie shifted her purse. The notebook inside pressed against her ribs. Then we'll see what happens together. Walt got back in his sedan. Roy's old pickup pulled into the parking lot behind them. He'd closed the diner early after all. 4 vehicles now, 4 witnesses. They drove in convoy to the reception barn on Old Mill Road. White lights were strung everywhere, visible from a quarter-mile away. Music and laughter carried on the wind. Cars packed the gravel lot. Looked like 80 people, maybe more. Leonard straightened his suit jacket as he climbed out of Tommy's truck. His hands were steady. His face was calm. But Bonnie had poured him coffee 3 times a week for 10 years. She knew what it looked like when he was holding something down. The barn door was 50 feet away. Warm light spilled out. Inside, Sharon's new life was happening. The one where Leonard didn't exist except as the mistake she'd corrected. Tommy stood on Leonard's right, Bonnie on his left, Walt and Roy a few steps behind. "You don't have to go in," Tommy said. Leonard looked at the barn, at the lights, at the carefully decorated door with its white ribbons and baby's breath. "Yeah," he said, "I do." And he started walking. The gravel crunched under his dress shoes, the only sound besides distant music and his own breathing. Bonnie followed, one hand on her purse. Inside, the notebook waited. Inside, the truth waited. 40 years of marriage were about to have their say. And for once, the furniture was going to talk. The barn door swung open. Leonard stepped inside, and the noise hit him. Conversations layering over each other, champagne glasses clinking, someone laughing too loud. The place was done up like a magazine photo. White draping everywhere, lights strung across the rafters, tables with centerpieces that probably cost more than his monthly rent. And mud. Tracked in from the parking lot, smeared across the white folding chairs outside, puddles forming near the entrance. All that money spent on decorations, and February mud was February mud. The music playing was Bruno Mars, something upbeat Leonard didn't recognize. A young bartender in a white shirt and black vest stood behind a portable bar, and when he saw Leonard walk in, his eyes widened, did a double take, looked away quick. Conversations near the entrance dimmed, heads turned, whispers started, that rustling sound of a crowd noticing something wrong. Leonard kept his hands in his pockets and walked to the back of the barn. Tommy steered him to a high-top table near the exit, the kind you could stand at. Smart, easier to leave if it came to that. Bonnie drifted toward the bar, staying in motion, eyes everywhere. Walt and Roy took up positions at different angles like they'd planned it. Maybe they had. Across the barn, past 50 or 60 people in nice clothes, Leonard saw Derek. Saw the moment Derek registered his presence. Derek's face did something, surprise first, then calculation. He set down his champagne and whispered to his groomsman, a younger guy in a rented tux, pointed. The groomsman looked, said something back. Derek nodded. Leonard just stood there, didn't smile, didn't glare, just existed in his navy suit and let people look. Near the gift table, he spotted Melissa in a pale pink bridesmaid dress that didn't suit her. She was talking to someone, hadn't seen him yet. Just as well, Sharon was nowhere visible, probably in some bride's room somewhere, touching up makeup or whatever brides did. The DJ transitioned to another song Leonard didn't know. Someone near the dance floor laughed. Life went on around him like he was a ghost. Then Derek started walking over. The crowd parted slightly. His cologne arrived 3 seconds before he did, something expensive that made Leonard's eyes water. Designer suit, perfect hair, gym-sculpted shoulders under the jacket. Everything about Derek said I won. He stuck out his hand, forcing the handshake. "Leonard, big of you to come. Shows real character." His tone was condescending. His eyes were scanning Leonard's 20-year-old suit, cataloging the cheap. Leonard shook his hand. Derek squeezed too hard, held too long. A dominance thing. At 51, playing games like a child. "Just came to bear witness," Leonard said. Derek smiled, misread it completely. "Well, we appreciate you being supportive of Sharon's happiness. She deserves the best. There it was again. We appreciate, like Derek had ownership." The implication was clear. Leonard hadn't given Sharon the best, but Derek would. Tommy shifted his weight beside Leonard. A warning. Easy. Derek was still talking. "Beautiful setup, right? Sharon wanted everything perfect. We spared no expense." Leonard said nothing. Let Derek fill the silence. "Anyway," Derek adjusted his cufflinks. "Gold, probably real. Glad you could make it, really. Takes a big man to celebrate his ex's happiness." He said big man like he meant small man. Like Leonard standing here was pathetic. Derek walked away, returning to Sharon's side near the head table. He whispered something to her. She turned, and her eyes found Leonard across the barn. Her face went white, then red. She hadn't expected him to actually come. Tommy muttered, "What a piece of work." Leonard wiped his hand on his pants, trying to get Derek's cologne off. The smell clung like a stain. The DJ tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the maid of honor, Melissa Granger, would like to say a few words." Leonard's stomach dropped. Melissa walked to the microphone, champagne glass in hand. She looked at Sharon and Derek, not at the room, not at him. "I've known Derek for almost a year now," she started, and there were polite chuckles. "And honestly, I've been waiting for someone like him to come into my mom's life." She paused, sipped her champagne. "My mom has been through a lot, more than most people know." Leonard's hands gripped the edge of the high-top table. She spent decades trying to make things work, trying to connect with someone who just wasn't there emotionally. The barn was quiet now, everyone listening. It takes real courage to leave a marriage that's already dead, to admit that you deserve better, to start over at 64. Her voice cracked slightly on the word courage, just a hitch, barely noticeable, but Leonard heard it, the only crack in the armor. "And Derek, Melissa turned to him, smiled. You see her. You appreciate her. You treat her the way she deserves to be treated. People nodded. A few women were tearing up. So I'm grateful. Grateful that Mom finally found someone who makes her happy. Someone who shows up. Someone who's actually present. Someone who's actually present. The words hit like fists. Melissa raised her glass. To Mom and Derek. To real partnership. To courage. To finally being happy. To Sharon and Derek, the crowd echoed. Applause filled the barn. Sharon was crying, happy tears, dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Derek stood and hugged Melissa, kissed Sharon, played the role perfectly. Every head in the room turned to glance at Leonard. Quick looks, then away. Pity and judgment in equal measure. His vision tunneled, his face burned. He tasted copper in his mouth, that metallic taste that came before you either hit something or passed out. Tommy's hand clamped on his shoulder, hard, anchoring. Breathe, buddy, Tommy said quietly. The DJ started music again. At Last, by Etta James, their song, his and Sharon's. From 1984, first dance at their wedding reception in the church basement. Sharon and Derek moved to the dance floor. He spun her. She laughed. The guests watched, clapped along. Leonard turned and walked toward the exit. His legs felt disconnected from his body. The barn door was right there, 20 feet, 15, Tommy followed. Len, wait. But Leonard was already pushing through the door into cold air. The February night hit his face, and he gulped it down like drowning. Walked toward the parking lot, toward his truck, away from the music and laughter, and his daughter's voice saying courage, like Sharon was the brave one. His hands shook so badly he couldn't get the truck key from his pocket, fumbled it. The keys fell in the gravel with a small clink. He bent down, picked them up, stood there holding them, staring at his truck like it was something he didn't recognize. Inside the barn, music, voices, celebration, Sharon's new life. The one where Leonard was the villain, who wasn't present, who didn't show up, who failed for 40 years. Outside, Leonard alone under weak winter stars, breathing hard, trying to remember how to be a person. Tommy's footsteps crunched on gravel behind him. Didn't say anything, just stood there. Leonard tried to get the key in the door lock. Missed. Tried again. His hand wouldn't stop shaking. I shouldn't have come, he said. Maybe not, Tommy said. But you did. 2 years I kept quiet. Didn't fight. Signed what she wanted. Let her tell her story. His voice cracked. And this is what it got me. Tommy didn't answer. What was there to say? Inside, the music changed to something else. More laughter. The party rolling on without him, like he'd never been there at all. Maybe he should just go. Drive home. Let Sharon have this. Let Melissa believe what she believed. Let Derek win, because that's what happens sometimes. Decent men lost and predators won, and that was just how it went. My own daughter, Leonard said quietly, thinks I'm the villain. Tommy pulled something from his pocket, a cocktail napkin wrapped around ice chips. Your face is redder than a fire truck. Hold this. Leonard pressed the cold napkin to his face. Through the barn window, visible even from here, he could see people gathering near the gift table. Could see Bonnie standing there, and Melissa beside her, and Bonnie pulling something blue from her purse. A notebook. A small crowd forming. Tommy said, come on back in, buddy. Bonnie's about to make things interesting. Leonard stared through the barn window. More people were gathering around Bonnie now. 8, 10, 12. Walt appeared in the frame, manila folder in hand. Sharon was moving toward the commotion, her white dress bright even from a distance. Derek following, both of them looking concerned. What's she doing? Leonard asked. Telling the truth, Tommy said. Whether you're in there or not, but it'd mean more if you were. Leonard looked at his truck, at the keys in his shaking hand, at the road leading away from here. Then he looked back at the barn, at Bonnie's small figure, notebook open, surrounded by curious guests, at his daughter standing there, arms crossed. If he left now, he was saying Sharon was right, that he didn't matter, that he could be erased. He straightened, wiped his face with the ice napkin one more time, gave it back to Tommy. All right, he said. They walked back toward the barn. Each step felt like walking underwater, like the air had weight. But he kept moving. Leonard pushed the barn door open. All the heads that had watched him leave now watched him return. Conversations faltered. Someone near the door whispered. He came back. He walked straight to the back corner where his table waited, claimed his spot, stood there. The crowd around Bonnie had grown to 20 people now. She was reading from the notebook, her voice carrying across the barn, even without the microphone. February 14th, 23, Valentine's Day, booth 6 at Roy's Diner, 2:15 p.m. Bonnie's hands were shaking, but her voice was level. Sharon Granger and Derek Paulson. Derek's exact words. Once we're married, the farm's worth twice what Leonard thinks. The orchard land alone, if we can get it rezoned commercial. The barn went quiet. The DJ had stopped the music, standing there awkwardly. Melissa stood near Bonnie, her face confused. She looked between the notebook and her mother, trying to understand. Sharon pushed through the crowd. This is inappropriate. This is my wedding. But an older woman, Karen from the VFW, Leonard recognized her, held up a hand. Let her finish. Bonnie continued reading. April 3rd, 2023, booth 6, 11:30 a.m. Derek showing Sharon paperwork, talking about moving survey markers and eastern boundary adjustment. Sharon asked if it was legal. Derek said it's legal if the right paperwork gets filed. Derek's face had lost all color. He stepped toward Bonnie. Where did you can't just... Walt moved forward, opened his manila folder. And I got the property fraud right here. Original 1947 survey and the new one your firm filed last September, Mr. Paulson. He held up 2 maps. Even from across the barn, Leonard could see they didn't match. 3-foot discrepancy, Walt said, his voice carrying that surveyor's authority. 2 acres of orchard land, your firm's signature, your seal, gasps from the crowd. People pushing closer to see? A man near the front, looked like one of Derek's friends, said, Hold on. What's going on? Bonnie turned a page in her notebook. June 12th, 2023, booth 6, 3:45 p.m. Sharon worried about Melissa. Derek's response? She'll side with you. She already thinks he's distant. Just keep that narrative going. Melissa's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattered on the floor. She didn't seem to notice. Mom, her voice was small. Mom, what is this? Sharon's eyes darted around, looking for support, finding none. Melissa, this isn't... It's not what it sounds like. August 8th, 2020. Bonnie read. Derek explaining timing. File before harvest appraisal to keep farm value low. Sharon nervous. Derek said, Trust me, I do this for a living. Derek grabbed Sharon's arm. We need to... Sharon yanked her arm away. You said no one would know. You said... She stopped herself, but it was too late. The crowd had heard. Pastor Jim stood near the entrance, arms crossed, watching. Roy beside him, both witnesses to 40 years of Leonard's life. Bonnie flipped to another page. Her hands steady now, finding their rhythm. October 30th, 2023. Sharon, having doubts, said she felt guilty. Derek told her, It's all legal. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just finally putting yourself first. A woman Leonard didn't know, one of Derek's relatives, maybe, said, I don't understand. What does this mean? Walt held up his documents higher. It means Mr. Paulson's law firm filed fraudulent property surveys to steal 2 acres of Leonard Granger's family land. Land that's been in the Granger family since 1947. Leonard's grandfather planted that orchard. 60 apple trees for 60 months he served overseas. A murmur went through the crowd, anger building. In small-town Iowa, you didn't mess with a WW2 veteran's legacy. You just didn't. The young bartender had his phone out, recording. This would be all over town by morning. December 19th, 2023, Bonnie continued, discussing separation announcement. Sharon wanted to wait until after Christmas. Derek said right after holidays would be perfect. And I quote, less time for him to lawyer up before the farm. Value gets assessed. Mom. Melissa's voice cut through the noise. Everyone stopped. Mom, look at me. Sharon turned. Her mascara was running now, black streaks down her cheeks. Is this true? Melissa asked. Were you planning this before you even told Dad you wanted a divorce? It's not that simple. Were you? Sharon's mouth opened, closed. She looked at Derek for help. Derek held up his hands. Sharon, I think we should get a lawyer before... Before what? Sharon's voice went shrill. You said this was legal. You said no one kept records. She gestured at Bonnie, at the notebook, her voice rising. You said it would be fine. The entire barn heard it. 60, 70 people, all watching Sharon confirm everything in that blue notebook. Derek stepped back. Actually stepped back from her, creating distance. I told you we needed to be careful. I told you. Don't you dare, Sharon hissed. Don't you dare put this on me. But Derek was already moving, whispering to his groomsmen, looking for exits. Melissa stood frozen between her parents, her mother in white, her father across the barn in his old Navy suit. The 2 versions of the story, and only one could be true. So which is it, Mom? Melissa's voice shook. Dad was emotionally distant, and you tried for years, or you were planning to steal his land while you were still married. Sharon reached for Melissa's hands. Melissa stepped back. I gave that speech, Melissa said, about courage, about finding someone who treats you right. She looked across the barn at Leonard, really looked at him, saw him standing there at the back. Tommy beside him, just present, quiet, not defending himself, not even trying. And he's been standing there the whole time, Melissa whispered, just standing there. Sharon followed Melissa's gaze. Her eyes met Leonard's across the crowded barn. 40 years of marriage in that look. 40 years of mornings and meals and mortgage payments and all the small ways they'd built a life, and then she'd sold it, piece by piece, documented in a waitress's notebook. What did Sharon want now? Forgiveness? Understanding? For him to say it was okay? Leonard held her gaze for 3 heartbeats. Then he nodded once. Not forgiveness, not victory, just acknowledgement. I see you. I see what you did. And now everyone else does too. He turned and walked toward the exit. Didn't run. Didn't storm out. Just left. Head up, shoulders back, dignity intact. Behind him, Sharon's voice rose. Leonard, wait. But he didn't stop. Pushed through the barn door into the cold February night. Tommy and Bonnie and Walt followed him like a protective formation. The door swung shut behind them, muffling the chaos inside. In the parking lot, under stars that had finally emerged from the clouds, Leonard stopped and breathed. Walt came up beside him, manila folder still in hand. That property fraud's enough for criminal charges, if you want to press them. Leonard stood quiet, looking up at Orion's belt. The same stars his grandfather had seen in 1947. The same stars that would be there long after all of this was forgotten. What happens to Sharon if I do? He asked. Walt adjusted his glasses. Criminal conspiracy, likely. Lighter sentence than Derek, but it'd be on her record. At 64, that's not nothing. Tommy said, Your call, buddy. No one would blame you. Bonnie shifted her purse, the notebook inside. When my pension was stolen, I had no choice. No one listened. You have choices now, Leonard. He thought about Melissa's face as she realized her mother had lied. Thought about Sharon in that white dress, mascara running, everything she'd built crumbling. Thought about his grandfather's orchard, 60 trees still standing. The land, Leonard said. Can I get the land back? Walt nodded. Original survey stands. It's yours, always was. Leonard looked at the barn. Through the windows, he could see people still gathered, still talking. Sharon at the center, Derek nowhere visible. Probably slipped out a side door. His daughter was in there. Probably confused, probably hurt, probably wondering who to believe. I didn't come here to destroy her, Leonard said quietly. Just to be seen. He pulled his truck keys from his pocket, looked at the 3 people who'd stood with him, Tommy with his loyalty, Bonnie with her witness, Walt with his evidence. Truth came out, he said. Land's safe, that's enough. You're sure? Walt asked. Leonard nodded. Let the truth be the punishment, that's plenty. He climbed into his truck, started the engine, looked back at the barn one more time. Through the window, he could see Melissa standing alone now, looking toward the parking lot. Looking for him, maybe, but not tonight. Tonight, he'd done what he came to do. He'd showed up. He'd stood witness to his own life. He'd let the truth speak. The rest could wait. Leonard pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the circus behind. In his rearview mirror, the barn's white lights faded into the February dark. Sometimes, the strongest thing a man could do was walk away when he'd already won. 3 weeks later, Leonard woke to weak sunlight filtering through his apartment window. Late February now, the tail end of winter. He measured out 3 scoops of coffee. Same ritual, same cracked mug, same catch on his knuckle. The farmhouse was his. Papers signed, settlement revised, original survey reinstated. 12 acres, 60 apple trees, the house his grandfather built. All of it back where it belonged. Sharon had moved to her sister's place in Des Moines, left town quiet, 3 days after the wedding that never finished. Word around Roy's diner was she couldn't face the looks, the whispers, the way conversations stopped when she walked into the grocery store. Derek was facing a Bar Association ethics review. His law firm had quietly let him go. The property fraud was documented, witnessed, undeniable. Walt had given Leonard the option to press charges. Leonard had said no. The truth getting out was punishment enough. Melissa had called once, left a voicemail. Dad, I want to talk. When you're ready. I'm staying in town for a few more days. I know I don't deserve it, but when you're ready. Leonard hadn't called back yet, wasn't being cruel, just wasn't ready. He'd been working on the farmhouse instead. Small repairs, things that had been neglected during the divorce. Fixed the porch rail, replaced a rotten board on the back steps, cleaned out gutters, put his hands on his grandfather's house, and reminded it someone still cared. Friday, he went to the VFW fish fry. Tommy saved him a seat without asking. Walt joined them with his usual manila folder. Different documents now, something about a water main project. How you doing, Len? Tommy asked. Better. And he was. Not healed, not whole, but better. Karen brought him his usual plate. Extra coleslaw, no roll. Patted his shoulder as she set it down. Didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The whole town knew. The young bartender's video had made the rounds. By Sunday morning, everyone at First Lutheran had heard some version. Pastor Jim had shaken Leonard's hand after service, held it for a long moment, said nothing. That was enough. Saturday afternoon, Leonard was in the orchard with pruning shears, assessing winter damage. Late February sun was warmer now, almost pleasant. The trees stood bare, but buds were swelling on the branches. 6 weeks, maybe less, and they'd bloom. He heard a car pull into the driveway. Rental plates, Colorado. Melissa got out, holding 2 coffee cups and a carrier. She stood at the edge of the orchard, uncertain. Leonard set down his shears, didn't walk toward her, didn't walk away, just waited. She came to him, crossing the brown grass between dormant trees. "Bonnie told me you take it black with 3 sugars," Melissa said, offering a cup. Leonard took it. She would know. They stood there, father and daughter, with 2 coffees and 3 years of silence between them. "Can we talk?" Melissa asked. Leonard nodded toward the trees. "Can talk while I work. Spring pruning." Then relief crossed her face. Grateful for something to do, some frame to hang words on. He showed her the branches. Dead wood first. Brittle, gray, breaks clean. Then cross branches that rub and cause disease. Water sprouts growing straight up, stealing energy from fruit production. "Here." He handed her the shears. "See where that branch is growing inward? Cut it there, just above the collar." When she positioned the shears, uncertain, he put his hands over hers, guided the angle. "There." She cut. The branch fell. "Like that?" "Like that." They worked quietly for a few minutes. Leonard pruning, Melissa watching, occasionally trying a cut herself under his guidance. Finally, she said, "I need to apologize. Really apologize. I know. I believed everything Mom said. I didn't even question it." Her voice cracked. "I thought you were the problem. That you were cold. That you didn't try." Leonard cut another branch. "You were her daughter. You loved her. That's not wrong." "What? But I should have." "Should have what?" He looked at her. "Called and asked my side. I didn't exactly make that easy. Didn't fight for you when your mother told her story. You shouldn't have had to fight for me." Melissa's eyes were wet now. "I'm your daughter. I should have known." Leonard set down the shears. Looked at this woman who carried his stubbornness and her mother's expressiveness. A hard combination. "You didn't know?" he said. "That's on me. I should have tried harder to reach you. I was horrible at the wedding. That speech, you thought you were telling the truth. That's what your mother told you." Melissa wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "How are you not angry at me?" "I am angry." Leonard picked up his shears again. "But I'm also your father. And anger's just anger. It passes." He pointed to another branch. "This one's dead. Take it off." She positioned the shears and cut, getting better at it. "Tell me about Grandpa's orchard," Melissa said quietly. "I don't think I ever really listened before." Leonard looked at the 60 trees around them, his grandfather's trees, his father's trees, his trees now. Maybe someday Melissa's trees, if she wanted them. "Your great-grandfather Frank planted these in 1907, he started, and for the first time in 3 years, his daughter listened. They walked between the rows as Leonard had talked. Melissa listened with her teacher's attention, the kind that asked questions, that wanted to understand, not just hear. "Frank came back from the war in '46, Leonard said. "Bought this land with his military pay. 12 acres, farmhouse, barn. First thing he did was order 60 apple saplings. 1 for each month he was overseas." "Why apples?" "Food you can store through winter. Independence." Frank's father lost their farm in the Depression. Frank wanted something that'd last. Something that'd feed a family, even when times were hard. They stopped at the oldest tree. Trunk thick as a man's waist, bark gnarled and gray. But the buds on its branches were healthy, swelling with spring. "This was the first one," Leonard said. "Planted April 1947, 77 years old, still producing." Melissa touched the trunk, ran her hand over the rough bark. "It outlived everyone who planted it." "That's the point." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Derek was going to bulldoze these. That was the plan. For townhouses. For money." Leonard started walking again. 2 acres of orchard, rezoned commercial, developed. He figured 300,000 profit. And Mom knew? It wasn't a question, but Leonard answered anyway. She knew. Melissa stopped walking. Why? Why would she do that? She grew up coming here. She knew Grandpa Frank. She used to help pick apples. Leonard thought about that. About Sharon at 24, laughing in this orchard, her dress pockets full of Harrelson apples. About Sharon at 64, sitting in booth 6 at Roy's, planning how to sell it. "People change," he said. "Fear changes them." She got scared of being old and poor and alone. And Derek told her a story where she was the victim and I was the problem, and the solution was worth $780,000. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it understandable. Melissa wiped her eyes again. "How are you so calm about this?" Leonard wasn't calm. Under the surface, under the steady voice and the careful hands, there was still anger, still hurt. Still, the taste of copper from standing in that barn, while his daughter praised his ex-wife's courage. But anger was like pruning. You could let it grow wild, choking out everything else. Or you could cut it back, shape it, make it serve something useful. I'm not calm, Leonard said. I'm just old enough to know anger doesn't fix anything. They reached the far edge of the orchard. Beyond the fence, the neighbor's corn stubble stretched away, brown and dormant. I'm taking a sabbatical next year, Melissa said, from teaching. Leonard looked at her. I want to come back here, learn about this place, about you, about everything I missed by believing the wrong story. That's a big decision. I missed 3 years already. I'm not missing more. Leonard felt something in his chest. Not quite hope, but adjacent to it. A possibility. Orchard work isn't easy, he said. Good. I need not easy right now. He handed her the pruning shears. Then let's finish these trees. They worked until the sun started setting, painting the bare branches black against an orange sky. Leonard showed her how to identify crossing branches, how to open up the canopy for airflow, how to shape for fruit production. His back ached by the time they finished. 67 wasn't 27, and pruning was hard work, but it was good work, the kind that left you tired in an honest way. Walking back to the house, Melissa said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you press charges? Against Derek, against Mom. Walt said you could have. Leonard had asked himself that question for 3 weeks now. Had different answers on different days. Because prosecuting them doesn't give me back 40 years, he said finally. Doesn't make you believe me any faster. Doesn't make the orchard bloom. But they would have paid for what they did. They are paying. Your mother left town, Derek lost his career, and everyone knows what happened. In a town this size, that's punishment enough. They reached the porch. The same steps Leonard had climbed 10,000 times. The same rail he'd just fixed. Besides, Leonard said, I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. And I got it. Melissa's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, looked at the screen. Sharon calling. She declined it. Set the phone face down on the porch rail. Leonard noticed, but said nothing. I'll talk to her eventually, Melissa said. But not today. Fair enough. They stood on the porch as the sun dropped below the horizon. The orchard faded into silhouette. 60 trees standing like sentinels in the dusk. These bloom in about 6 weeks, Leonard said. White and pink. Prettiest thing you'll ever see. I'd like to be here for that. Then you should come back. Melissa nodded, picked up her phone and keys, started toward her rental car, then stopped. Dad? Yeah? I love you. I should have said that 3 years ago, but I'm saying it now. Leonard's throat tightened. Love you too, kid. She got in her car and drove away, taillights disappearing down the gravel road. Leonard stood on the porch until full dark, listening to the wind and the bare branches, smelling the cold earth beginning to thaw. Some things rooted deeper than anyone knew, and some men knew how to wait for spring. April came soft that year. The killing frosts ended early, and by the second week, the apple trees were loaded with buds ready to burst. Leonard had been watching them for days now, waiting for that moment when winter finally let go. It happened on a Thursday. He woke to sunlight that actually felt warm, stepped onto the porch with his coffee, and saw white blooms opening across the orchard like scattered snow. The trees had kept their promise. He called Melissa. She answered on the second ring. They're blooming, he said. I'll be there tomorrow. She arrived Friday evening, this time with a duffel bag instead of just overnight things. Moving back in stages, a weekend here, a week there, testing what reconciliation looked like in practice instead of theory, they sat on the porch as evening came on, watching the blooms glow in the twilight. The air smelled like apple blossoms and wet earth and possibility. I talked to Mom, Melissa said. Leonard sipped his coffee, waited. She's staying in Des Moines, with Aunt Linda. Got a job at a bank there. Entry level, says she needs to start over. How is she? Melissa looked at him surprised. You care? I was married to her for 40 years. Of course I care. Melissa struggled for words. Smaller. Does that make sense? Like she took up all this space before, and now she's just small. Leonard understood. Sharon had always been the bigger personality, the one who filled rooms. Losing that, losing the story she'd told herself about who she was, would make anyone seem smaller. She asked about you, Melissa said. What did you tell her? That you're doing better than she deserves. Leonard smiled slightly. That's fair. A car pulled into the driveway, Tommy's truck, and behind it, Walt's sedan. Behind that, Roy's old pickup. What's this? Melissa asked. Asked some folks over. Got something I wanted to do. The three men climbed out, walked to the porch. Tommy had brought beer. Walt had brought his camera, fancy digital thing he used for documenting survey work. Roy carried a covered dish that smelled like his famous coleslaw. "Gentlemen," Leonard said. "Melissa, you remember Tommy, Walt, and Roy?" "The cavalry," Melissa said. "From the wedding." Tommy grinned. "The circus, you mean?" They gathered on the porch, and Leonard poured coffee for those who wanted it. The sun was setting behind the orchard now, turning the white blooms pink and gold. "Wanted to thank you all," Leonard said, "for what you did. Didn't have to get involved. Did anyway." Tommy waved it off. "That's what friends do." Still, meant something. Leonard looked at each of them. Meant everything, actually. Walt raised his coffee cup. "To standing up, to not standing alone," Roy added. They drank to that. Bonnie's car appeared on the road, pulling in behind the others. She got out in her diner uniform. Must have come straight from the evening shift. "Started without me?" she called. "Just getting going," Leonard said. Bonnie climbed the porch steps, and Leonard surprised her with a hug. She stiffened for a second, then hugged back. "You saved my life," Leonard said quietly. "You know that?" "Just told the truth. Not everyone would have." She pulled back, eyes bright. "Well, someone had to." They gathered around the porch rail. 6 people watching the sunset over an orchard that almost got bulldozed for townhouses. "I've been thinking," Leonard said, "about what gets passed down. My grandfather planted these trees so his kids would have food. My father kept them so I'd have inheritance, and I almost lost them because I stayed quiet too long." He looked at Melissa. "But you all reminded me something. Truth needs witnesses. Silence has its place, but so does speaking up." Damn right," Bonnie said. "So I wanted you here tonight. First bloom since everything. Wanted you to see what you saved." Walt took photos with his fancy camera. The orchard in twilight, the blooms, the 6 of them standing on the porch, documenting it the way he documented everything. Precise, careful, making sure the record was accurate. Pastor Jim's car pulled up, then Karen and Deb from the VFW, then a few other folks from town. Word had gotten around, the way it does in small places. Before long, there were 20 people on Leonard's porch and lawn, drinking coffee and beer, eating Roy's coleslaw and someone's potato salad, watching the apple blossoms catch the last light. It wasn't a party, wasn't a celebration exactly, more like a witness. A collective acknowledgement that something had tried to die here and didn't. Tommy stood next to Leonard at the porch rail. "Hell of a few weeks. Hell of a few years. But you made it." Leonard looked at the orchard, at Melissa talking with Bonnie, at Walt showing Pastor Jim the photos on his camera, at all these people who'd chosen to stand with him when it would have been easier not to. "We made it," Leonard corrected. "Wasn't just me." Tommy clinked his beer bottle against Leonard's coffee mug. As full dark came on, someone brought out battery-powered lanterns. The gathering stretched into evening, folks talking quiet, laughing occasionally, standing in the presence of 60 trees that had outlasted their original planter and almost outlasted Leonard himself. Melissa found him as people started leaving. "This was good, Dad." "Yeah, it was." "Think you'll stay here, at the farmhouse?" Leonard looked at the house his grandfather built, the porch his father repaired, the orchard he'd tended for 40 years. "Where else would I go?" She smiled. "Good, because I'm coming back in August, for the whole year, and I'll need someone to teach me how to harvest apples." "That's hard work." "So you keep saying, and you keep not listening." She laughed. First real laugh he'd heard from her since she was a teenager. One by one, the guests left, headlights pulling away down the gravel road. Tommy was last, waiting to make sure Leonard didn't need anything. "I'm good, Tommy." "Yeah, you are." Alone finally, Leonard sat on the porch steps with his cold coffee. The orchard was invisible now, just a darker darkness against the night sky, but he knew it was there. Could smell the blooms on the wind, could hear the branches moving. 60 trees his grandfather planted for 60 months at war, all of them still standing, all of them still blooming. August came with heat that made the apples swell on their branches. Melissa moved back 3 weeks earlier than planned, showed up with her Toyota packed full, said she'd given notice at the school in Denver, and what did Leonard need done first? He put her to work. She learned to identify apple scab and codling moth, learned about thinning fruit so the remaining apples grew larger, learned the difference between Haralson and Honeycrisp between Jonathan and Wolf River, learned that orchard work meant getting up at dawn and working until your back ached and going to bed proud of what you'd accomplished. She was good at it. Had her father's patience and her mother's attention to detail, the best of both when it came down to it. They didn't talk about Sharon much. She called Melissa once a week, and Melissa took the calls outside, walking through the orchard while they talked. Leonard never asked what they discussed. That was between them. Once, Melissa said, she asked if you'd ever forgive her. Leonard was fixing the barn door hinge when she said it, kept working, thinking about his answer, Tell her I already did, he said finally. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back. Melissa nodded. That's fair. The orchard produced heavy that year. By September, the trees were loaded with fruit that needed picking before the first frost. Leonard and Melissa worked dawn to dusk, filling bushel after bushel. Their hands got sticky with apple juice. Their backs got sore from reaching. Their arms got scratched from branches. And it felt good. Tommy came by to help on weekends. So did Walt. Even Roy closed the diner one afternoon and picked a dozen bushels himself. Like old times, Roy said, biting into a fresh Honeycrisp. Used to help your dad harvest when I was a kid. They sold most of the apples at the farmer's market in town. Melissa ran the stand while Leonard worked the orchard. She was better with people than he was anyway. Inherited that from her mother, too. One Saturday morning at the market, Sharon showed up. Melissa saw her first. Mom? Leonard was arranging apple boxes, but he looked up. Sharon stood at the edge of the market, thin in a way she hadn't been before. Hair shorter, less makeup. She looked like someone who'd stopped trying to be something and settled for just being. I was visiting Linda, Sharon said quietly. Thought I'd stop by. Melissa looked at Leonard. He nodded. Your call. You want to help sell apples? Melissa asked. Sharon's eyes went bright. Really? Really? So Sharon stood at the stand with her daughter, selling apples from the orchard she'd almost destroyed. Leonard watched from a distance, making sure there were enough boxes, enough change, enough everything. She didn't try to talk to him, didn't approach, just helped Melissa bag apples and make change and smile at customers who definitely knew who she was and what she'd done. At the end of the day, packing up, Sharon finally came over to Leonard. Thank you, she said. For what? For not pressing charges, for letting me see Melissa, for... She gestured at the apple boxes, but for this? Leonard loaded a box into his truck from Wichita. You're her mother. Always will be. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it. I'm sorry for all of it. He looked at her, this woman he'd loved for 40 years. This woman who'd betrayed him for money and fear and whatever else had been eating at her. I know, he said. That was all. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just acknowledgement. Sharon nodded, helped Melissa load the last boxes. Then she got in her car and drove back to Des Moines. You okay? Melissa asked Leonard. Yeah. You? Yeah. They drove home with the truck bed full of empty apple boxes and cash from a good market day. The orchard stood waiting, branches lighter now. Most of the fruit picked and sold and eaten and made into pies across 3 counties. The work of 77 years, still producing. Next year, Melissa said we should plant more trees. Leonard smiled. You planning to stay that long? Long as you'll have me. He reached over and squeezed her hand. Then we'll plant more trees. Because that's what you did. You planted things that would outlast you. You tended what your grandfather started. You passed it on to the next generation. You kept faith with the dead and made promises to the living. And you waited for spring, because spring always came. Late October, after the last apples were picked and the trees began dropping their leaves, Leonard sat on the porch with his cracked handle mug and watched the orchard prepare for winter. Melissa was inside making dinner, something with squash from the garden, filling the farmhouse with smells his mother would have recognized. He thought about his grandfather planting 60 trees for 60 months overseas, about his father teaching him to graft and prune, about 40 years of marriage that ended in a barn full of witnesses and a notebook full of betrayed promises, about his daughter coming back. The wedding invitation was still somewhere in a drawer, probably. Sharon's careful handwriting. Mr. Leonard Granger and guest. He'd shown up alone, but hadn't left alone. That counted for something. Dignity wasn't in winning or losing. It was in standing for truth when lies would have been easier. In accepting help when pride said you didn't need it. In forgiving without forgetting, in letting go without giving up. Some things rooted deeper than anyone knew. Deeper than betrayal, deeper than hurt, deeper than fear. His grandfather's trees had outlasted the man who planted them. Had outlasted depression and drought and decades of hard winters. Had outlasted Sharon's plans to bulldoze them for profit, and they'd bloom again come April, same as always. The screen door creaked open. Melissa came out with 2 cups of coffee. Dinner in 10 minutes, she said, sitting beside him. They watched the sun set behind the bare branches. Church bells from First Lutheran rang 6 o'clock, same as they had for 90 years. Same as they would for 90 more, probably. Think Grandpa Frank would be proud? Melissa asked. Of all this? Leonard sipped his coffee. I think he'd just be glad the trees are still here. Me too. Somewhere in the orchard, a crow called. The wind moved through empty branches. The earth turned toward winter, but spring was already waiting, patient as faith, certain as seasons. Some things didn't need explaining, they just needed tending. And some men knew how to wait,